children. Actually, I like children a lot. And there are a couple of reasons why, and two of them are here up on the slide. The first one is obviously a person's a person no matter how small. All children have rights. All children are human beings, obviously, and all children have a right to everything that we dream and want. The second thing is that, actually I take that back, I don't like all children. Sometimes I don't like my children. Only because they don't listen to me all the time, especially now because they have finals on Monday. But that's a different story. The second thing is children are the living messages we send to a time we will not see. They are our future. There's so much potential, and there's so much we need to say and do. I think how we treat children is very much a reflection of how we want to see society and what we want to say about our society. So it's really important that we treat them well. Which brings us to Malaysia. Right now, I don't know if you know this, but our population is almost 31.7 million people, of which 1/3 are children under the age of 18 years old. So that's about 10 million children. Out of that, 4% of the children are not Malaysians. They're marginalized communities, they are Orang Asli children, they're refugee and stateless kids who live within our country. And there are many things that they lack and they need, and that's why I'm here to sort of be one of the protectors to ensure that they have basic rights to basic dignity and have access to all these services that all Malaysian children have. But I'm here today to talk about stateless children because I'm obsessed for different reasons. One is personal, so I'm going to share stories, and one is obviously because I'm a child activist. The Deputy Minister was quoted as saying there are 190,000 stateless children in Malaysia. That's bigger than the population of Perlis. Yeah. In Malaysia, under the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child, under Article 8, we have a reservation on that article, which states that all children have a right to an identity. In Malaysia, because we have a reservation, we do not need to acknowledge children who are not Malaysian. They are, for all intents and purposes, especially if they're stateless, invisible. They don't, according to our government, exist. And they don't have any legal form of document in this country. A birth certificate is also one of the hardest things that they get, although universally, all children are entitled to a birth certificate. A stateless person is obviously then a person who is not considered a national by any state or under any operation of law. Rohingyas, for example, which is what's happening next door, are considered refugees and stateless because they're not recognized by the government as being nationals. So right now, in August, there were 70,000 Rohingyas who have fled to Bangladesh, the neighboring country. But as of now, another 130,000 have crossed the border. So there are 200,000 Rohingyas on the run. And our country, thank God, has actually said that they will open the borders to allow these stateless people, these refugees, to come to our country to seek shelter. Before we get into the Child Act, I'm going to tell you a story of why it's so personal. As a child activist and someone who's a co-founder of a yayasan in Chowkit called Yayasan Chowkit, I started a shelter and a school with some others to look at protecting children in and around the area in Chowkit. One of the things that I do is I pick up babies. There are lots of people for lots of reasons, religious and policy-wise, who are afraid of bringing up or aren't able to bring up their own children. So I get a lot of phone calls. I get a lot of calls, please, Dr. Tini, can you come pick up this child? Can you take care of this child? Can you bring the mother to the hospital for checkups, etc.? So I go and I pick them up. On one day in 2008, I received a phone call asking me to go up to Klang to pick up a child. So I went, I jumped into a stranger's car, went up to Klang in a stranger's car, and realized very soon while I was in this car that I was actually driving with traffickers and that they were actually going to sell me a baby. So when I got to Klang, to a house, there was a child in another room and a baby on the sofa. And that baby was about 2 months old, according to the doctor whom we saw later. Anyway, Long story short, they sold the baby to me. Okay, I bought the baby for 10,000 ringgit. And because I refused to buy the documents and the birth certificate to go with it, the child didn't have any documents. So that child is now my daughter. I adopted her. And she's stateless through no fault of hers, and because I refused to buy papers to go along with the baby. So she's now 9 years old. And she only got her birth certificate when she was 5, but no citizenship, so we're applying for citizenship. So she is one category of stateless people, children, in Malaysia. So there are different categories of stateless children. You have those who are born in Malaysia, but you have no papers, or may have papers, may have some kind of proof through witnesses that they have some kind of documents, hospital bills sometimes, to say that they're born in this stuff, but no legal document to say that they're Malaysian citizens. And you have undocumented, as in the children in Sabah. But you also have children who are born overseas or whose parents have failed to register. They're like 7 different categories. So you have, like the Rohingyans, victims of conflicts of law. You have children who are trafficked like my daughter, and they cannot go to any other country. And because of that, there are lots of consequences. I told you that Malaysia has a reservation on Article 8, on the right to identity. Malaysia also has a reservation on the UNCRC on Article 28, which is the right to education. The children in Malaysia who are not Malaysians, who have no papers, are not entitled to free and equal access to education. So everything is tanggung sendiri lah. So if you don't have 180 ringgit per year to go to a government school, you can't go to school. Sometimes they don't even take you in the school. So one of the things that we need to do in childcare and in many places, the NGOs who work with non-Malaysian children, is to try to find alternative education for them. So that's one of the biggest sins, I think, that we do, that we deny access to children, to education to children. There's no adequate health care, so there's no free and equal educational health services to children. So it's as simple as this. If you have an outbreak of measles, everybody gets measles. If you have an outbreak of chickenpox, everybody gets chickenpox. So there's no actual way of being able to monitor and look and take care of everybody when they don't have access to free and equal health services, and it's a problem. Family instability, unemployment, poverty, you read cases, there is an assumption that there is a us versus them kind of a mentality where they are foreigners and we are Malaysians. They're not foreigners. A lot of stateless people are Malaysian who've just no documents. And of course, there's increased social and financial marginalization as well. Exploitation. So we have all these different things I was telling you about. Selling babies, babies are trafficked for different reasons, children are trafficked for different reasons, organ harvesting, they are sold for begging purposes. My daughter was actually meant or targeted to be a beggar in Thailand. They were actually going to maim her and took her in a boat from Klang straight to Thailand. And because of that, I had to stop. I had to buy her back because I didn't want that to happen to her. But there's lots of things, labor, begging, etc. Pornography, child prostitution. So there's lots of reasons why these children are more vulnerable. Why do we care? Why should we protect them? Because, like you said, the number is 190,000, but that's only the registered number of children. We're not talking about the ones who are not registered. In Malaysia, if you look at the number of children born out of wedlock in the last 5 years, in Selangor and Wilayah Halong, the numbers are something like 250,000 children. Don't forget, having a birth certificate doesn't give you citizenship, yeah? And if your parents are not married, then the child follows the citizenship of the mother, not the father. Right now, as we speak, there's a whole conference going on in KL on a bin or binti and the child born out of wedlock conference. And it's connected. Everything is connected. You have the whole different kinds of laws that have to be looked at and reviewed in terms of looking at how do you protect single mothers who have children born out of wedlock. You cannot put a child, I'm saying this because it just happened this morning when I was sitting here listening to you. I got a text message about a case in Sungai Petani where the girl is 21 years old and she has a child born out of wedlock, and the hospital has taken her baby and called in the religious department because technically, under the law and policy, she can get arrested for zina. So, it's a matter of having to step in and say, I will guarantee to be her sponsor. She's not, whatever it is, you don't need to tell the mother, her parents. If she's above 18 years old, she shouldn't be arrested. You shouldn't take a baby. But these are some of the reasons why single mothers and young girls, and young parents in particular, have a hard time stepping forward when there's a pregnancy and it's a child born out of wedlock, and that's thereof. But these are some of the reasons how children are stateless. And you have to understand something, and I'm saying this to you because many of the children, like I said, who are here, the babies that I pick up, are Malaysian children or children of young mothers who are afraid to step forward because they're afraid of being arrested. So they dump their child. And I'm telling you, there's got to be other ways of being able to look at this issue. So what's the impact? I talked about the fact that they have no access to education, they have no access to health, they can't get married, they can't open a bank account, they can't go to university. They are, for all intents and purposes, invisible. But please understand that this is something that we can actually look at, and there are solutions to it, because they are man-made policies. They are policies made by the government. They are policies made by people who need more education, who need to sort of engage with NGOs and people like me, who want to tell them what's going on, because I don't think they understand what the impact is. A month ago, I was in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, at Tilburg University, which has a department called the Institute of Statelessness. And there, I met with lawyers and other people who work on this issue, on statelessness, to look at how we could address the issue here. I've told you there are different categories of stateless children. The one that is easiest to solve, is children, stateless children, who have been adopted by Malaysian parents. I have adopted 6 kids, right? I'm a single mom. I have 6 kids. One is Malaysian. No, it's not about so much about me, but that's not a sustainable thing for me to adopt every child that I see because they have no access to education. But 5 of my kids are stateless, right? And you sit there, and 3 of them are special needs, and they need health services. They have cerebral palsy, they're blind, they're little kids. And so the purpose of me going there was to try to find experts in the field to teach me how to engage and advocate for these children, and how the easiest category is to give citizenship to children, stateless children, who have been legally adopted by Malaysian parents. So far, in terms of application for statelessness, there are 8,000 applications every year. There is no reason why these children who have been legally adopted, you've gone through the process, should not be given citizenship. My daughter shouldn't wait 9 years. My son shouldn't wait 4. My other son, who's 2 years old, who's got cerebral palsy and blind, shouldn't have to pay a $2,000 deposit to go to see a doctor. It's just nuts, right? So you have these kind of problems. They end up in jail. They end up not in school. They end up being trafficked. They end up being lost. They end up disappearing. They end up being raped. They end up being murdered. I have cases. So, and never mind the implications for long-term drug and alcohol problems, mental health problems, etc. 190,000 stateless children is going to expand, is going to increase exponentially. 190,000 children, by the time they're 12 and 13 years old, already have children themselves. So you need to think of the problem. You cannot say that this is not our problem. This is our problem. And this is something that we can solve. We can say to the government, we can say to the policymakers, please be educated, look at the impact, look at these things. So when I went to Tilburg University, we sat down with the lawyers, sat down and said, let's look at for all the 7 categories, let's look at the one that is easiest to solve, the children who have been adopted, and how do we advocate? So I wrote, and we sat down, and they helped me draft a memorandum with all the reasons why these children should be given citizenship. We spoke to them, we spoke to lawyers at the International Court of Justice. We came back and we spoke to lawyers over here, and we'd said, you know what, we need to approach this from a multi-pronged approach. One is through court. So there's one court case right now in High Court looking at challenging the citizenship argument, a child who's been adopted by Malaysian parents. We need to send the memorandum to the Prime Minister. We need to look at different ways. Access to education would be great. That's one way of looking at it. It doesn't necessarily be citizenship straight away, but access to education and health services. How can you deny a child schooling? How do you not want to empower a child to do better? If you don't want them to stay in this country because you think they belong to others, wouldn't you want them to have some kind of skills so they could leave? I mean, that's just common sense, right? So this is what's happening now. The raids that are happening, foreigners, they're not migrant workers alone who are being raided and who are being picked up. Stateless people are as well. We've got a 15-year-old who's in detention for 2 years. We have lots of other cases elsewhere. We've got trafficked children who are in RKK, Rumah Kebajikan Kanak-Kanak in Kuantan. They've been there for 5 years. We have nowhere to go. There are lots of little incidences that you think don't mean very much, but they add up. And we need to look at the issue. Why protect them? Because they're ours. Because they have nowhere else to go. I know I sound totally depressing. I promise you I'm a really nice, friendly, happy person. But this is a very serious topic. And it's something that's so unnecessary. Because all you need to do is do the investigation. And if you find out that they have nobody else or no one else, then give them citizenship because you want them to be productive. It's not something that's so terribly difficult to do. So that's why, why do we bother? Because we should. Because children are our future, because they have nowhere else to go, because out of the common decency of our heart, and because they are, for all intents and purposes, Malaysian children, then they should stay, and you should give them something, and this is something we need to do. And this is something that will touch you, because I don't know, I just feel that you all know someone who knows someone who knows someone who most probably didn't get the documents, or maybe got pregnant, maybe had some child out of wedlock, are thinking of throwing away their child or putting their child up for adoption or not taking care of them. There are places to go and there are people to see, and there are NGOs and organizations who will work with all of you, who will keep you safe, who will protect you, who, if you want to keep your child, will help you do that, or if you want to give up your child, there's a way to do that too, but we'd rather you keep your child. And there's no need for at least one of these categories to exist, because we don't need to abandon children. So that's really what my topic's about. I think there are many things that are going on. If you know, like I said, what's happening to the Rohingyas, they are stateless. What's happening there is genocide. What needs to happen is that we need to protect them. We don't even have to look outside within our own state, within our own country, with UNHCR. We have 180,000 refugees, 198,000 actually, of which 40% are children. They're not in school. You look at the numbers of stateless, we said 190. I think the numbers are 3 times higher. You look at migrant workers, and you look at they have children, whether you want to, they have children. The numbers are much higher than the 4% that the official statistics are saying. It's a lot higher than that. It's almost 1 million. 1 million people in a population of 30.1 is a lot of people not to be in school and not to have education and health services. And this is something, I'm not a doomsayer like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. I'm saying this is something that's man-made, that we can take care of, that we need to do something. It's something that you can do. The issue on statelessness doesn't have to be such a dramatic subject, and it doesn't have to be such a dramatic issue with such dramatic consequences. It's something that you and I and everybody else can look at and talk about. If you want to know what you can do as individuals, well, if you're interested in being a lawyer in human rights, I'm not a lawyer of human rights, but I know lawyers who are human rights lawyers. If you want to do work on just protecting children, or working with your local NGO or local home to protect children, you can do that. If you want to help children educate themselves and empower themselves, poor kids in your neighborhood and stuff who want to do that, please do that. There are lots of different ways. If you want to talk about this issue, you can see me after this and talk to me about it. But I'm just saying this is something that is happening. It's happening today. It's happening right now. It's not that far away. It's not something that's unfathomable. It's right here on our doorstep. And it's something we can fix. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. So with that, thank you very much again.